All right, yesterday, both Democratic Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kristen Sinema of Arizona reiterated their opposition to any effort to get rid of the legislative filibuster. That's at 60-vote threshold, which is required to proceed to legislation. But the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says he is going to get rid of it. He's going to change it by January the 17th. But Senate Democrats are still hoping their colleagues will give in to the pressure and join them in deploying what is called the nuclear option. Now, this could be a political Armageddon. The Senate Republicans could use Senate procedures to bring the chamber to a grinding halt. But the question is, will they do it? With me now to talk about this and more is U.S. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. He serves on the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Well, Tony, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Senator. Thanks so much for joining us. And we're talking about a lot of issues that you've talked about. You've been up fighting this mandate, but I want to focus on this agenda by Chuck Schumer to change the Senate rules. Now they're saying, oh, this is going to be very narrow. It's only to deal with election issues. But we know that's not true. They will ram through, based upon the pressure from their base, every left-wing idea that they have been championing in the last decade.
Well, it would be a slippery slope, and let's pray that Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin hold to their word that they're not going to participate with it. I can pretty well say that Republicans are absolutely unified. We're certainly going to maintain the Senate. The way it's really protected our democracy from radical agendas in the past, where you have a mere majority trying to rush something through. And the Senate should be that saucer beneath the cup of tea to kind of cool the passions of the time. It should be noted that I think more than 20 Democrats, I can't remember the exact number, joined Susan Collins in a letter, I think it was in 2017, when we were under pressure as Republicans to get rid of the filibuster so we could ram through an agenda. Republicans weren't signed up with that, but it was interesting that more than 20 Democrats signed a letter urging us not to do that. Now, there really was no risk. Republicans did not support eliminating the filibuster because we realize how important it is to the maintenance of our democracy, and quite honestly, to form and force consensus on any kind of major piece of legislation. But Democrats, it's really their definition. They're just hypocrites, and they're being hypocritical right now. But I feel fairly confident that we'll beat back this attempt by Leader Schumer.
Now, this, Senator, is not the first time that this threat has been made. It's like, look, if you don't play with us, we're going to take our ball and go home. Last spring, we saw the same threat to eliminate the legislative filibuster. But at that point, Leader Mitch McConnell warned that he could use a procedural move to grind the Senate to a complete halt if Democrats deployed this nuclear option. Here's a clip of what the senator said in March of 2021.
If the Democrats break the rules to kill Rule 22 on a 50-50 basis, then we will use every other rule to make tens of millions of Americans' voices heard.
What tools do Republicans have as an option if the Democrats go forward with this?
Well, again, the U.S. Senate runs on consent. And so you can just grind the process to a halt by really failing to consent to virtually anything. And so you could really slow down the Senate. In the end, there are things you simply can't prevent. Depends on how Chuck Schumer plays the thing. It wouldn't be pleasant. I don't think it's going to be necessary. I've been very appreciative of what Joe Manchin. He stood strong. He did not agree with the Build Back Better plan, and he finally pulled the plug on that. And I have no idea really what Chuck Schumer is trying to pull here. If you're trying to get Joe Manchin on board, this is a really bad way of doing it, treating him and Kyrsten Sinema so shabbily.
Well, they're putting immense pressure, and I would say obvious. It appears to be obvious that Chuck Schumer and others are working with outside groups to put tremendous pressure on these two senators to try to get them to bow to what the Democrats want to do and changing the rules, just as they tried to do with the Build Government Bigger plan that you mentioned.
Well, they could be playing to their base, but let's face it, Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, they report to their constituents. And I don't think the constituents of West Virginia want to sign on to Chuck Schumer's radical agenda. I doubt the citizens of Arizona want to either. So having that support of your constituents I'm sure will kind of help provide the backbone for both Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin to hold strong on this.
Well, I would agree with you that Senator Manchin has stood firm on a number of issues, despite the pressure that has come from the president and from the Democratic base. Are you concerned that there may be kind of a fallback, where, as Chuck Schumer and others have talked about, a narrow carve-out for the elimination of the filibuster just on election-related reform measures?
I mean, I hope not. That's always a risk. But I think Joe Manchin's smart enough to realize what a dangerous slippery slope that would be. I mean, let's face it, Harry Reid, there's only one nuclear option, and Harry Reid used it. That was to change the rules with a mere majority vote. That created, for example, the opportunity for Republicans, when we needed to confirm a Supreme Court justice, to do the same thing the Democrats, to at least make equal the 50-vote rule on judicial appointments. So it would be a slippery slope. Harry Reid did a great deal to harm this institution. Hopefully Joe Manchin won't support Chuck Schumer in doing it further.
Senator Johnson, that's an extremely important point to be made, that the Democrats took the first shot in eliminating it for executive appointments and for lower courts. The Republicans then followed suit because a precedent had been set when it came to the Supreme Court. So if you follow that, that history, if the Democrats, this is important to their base, this federal takeover of elections, and so they do a carve out, what's then to prevent the Republicans when they hopefully retake the majority after the next election to put something that is important to conservatives in this carve out of the filibuster?
There'd be nothing to prevent that, and that's the danger of it. What you don't want is major policy changes, basically being like a ping pong ball, going from one extreme to the other, back and forth every 2 years. That'd be incredibly damaging for our democracy. So one of the functions the Senate performs is that cooling off period, where you really should deliberate, debate, discuss, particularly major pieces of legislation, and that the 60-vote threshold, which people refer to as the filibuster, requires consensus building, and that's a good thing.
I agree, and I am 100% with you on that. In fact, when, as you made reference to earlier, when the Republicans, there was pressure to them to change that legislative filibuster rule, and there were some Republicans that were going along with it, but most were not. I did not support it. I agree with you. I think it is important to try to reach consensus, or if you can't reach consensus, maintain the status quo. Because I look at what our allies and even our adversaries look at us internationally. If we're constantly changing and there's no stability, that puts us in a very precarious situation.
There were very few Republicans that even talked about changing the filibuster. Maybe some members in the House that I don't think really appreciated the function of the Senate. But Republicans have been very consistent this, because we realize the danger that would cause. So it's the Democrats that have always pushed the envelope here. What we did with the Supreme Court, by the way, is really went back to history, where it never really required, until Chuck Schumer arrived in the Senate and really borked Robert Bork. Or actually, he might have been a House member at that point in time. I wasn't here. It was really Chuck Schumer that led the effort to really change the way the Senate operated when it came to confirmation. So there may have been opposition nominees, but senators in the past, even though they could have required a 60-vote threshold, never did. So, for example, Justice Thomas, he was not passed. He didn't require 60 votes to be confirmed. Chuck Schumer has blown up the Senate. Harry Reid did it again. Not Chuck Schumer wants to build on that record of destruction.
Well, I'm hopeful.
I'm feeling pretty good that that's not going to happen.
Well, I'm glad, because I'm very hopeful that the Republicans in the Senate can hold the line, not just for the Senate, but for the sake of the nation. Senator Johnson, out of time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Have a great day. Stay healthy.